if you have access, or if you don't have access, let me know and I'll give you access now.
I do not, but that's one thing that's not necessarily necessary, just to sit and listen.
Done. All right. If you highlight the one I'm just using now, you'll see that it's essentially offset on one side, and it's 1 voxel wide on one side and 1.5 voxels wide on the other, and it's offset down so that on the side that it's 1 voxel, it's 1 voxel low. The reason this is necessary is we are essentially fooling the eye into thinking that it's the voxel is the spiral is moving between 2 voxels. You'll notice if I take that shape and I flip it over, I'm just going to do an example here. We'll put that one there and then flip it on its vertical axis. I get this. Oh, I need to change materials. That material is terrible.
Is that like mithril? Looks like.
Yeah. Okay. You'll notice on this outer edge, it's essentially 1 voxel wide at an angle slant. And the other side, it's kind of only like half. Now, the reason why we do that. Now, oh, that's one to me. And it's essentially what we are doing in this case here is these slivers. Okay. But okay. That's basically what we're doing is we're taking this shape here that I've just made and we're doing it at the corner instead. But as you can see, because this shape is 2 voxels total in volume, what we can do is we can post them next to each other. And on one side, either side we're standing on, the side that I'm standing on, you'll notice that it looks like it's 2 voxels. It looks like it's like 4 voxels in length and like 2 voxels high more. And that's creating this optical illusion of a single single surface when really it's not. Now, the tricky bit is what we're doing when we're making these is we're using these slivers to take another voxel and essentially, rather than it going up straight like this, we're bending it at a 45-degree angle. So, does that make sense? Have I got everyone understanding what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah. Well, that's the core of it. So what we're basically doing is we're going, all right, at the moment I can just do that because because the voxel is I'm working on 2 opposite sides. Whatever's in the middle will automatically conform to whatever I'm doing on the edges, because that's just the way the system is. When we start to do it using 2 adjacent sides rather than 2 opposite sides, we need to first shape the block that we want to play with, get the right width. Then we need to put on our 2 edges using the slivers. So that was kind of where I probably started losing people last time. But what we did before was I made this shape here. You can see essentially it's a full 2-volume voxel, but I've pushed it in on one side using one of my little cubes. So it's at that point it's only 3 voxels wide and 3 voxels deep on one side, but on all the other sides it's the equivalent of more, if that makes sense. So if I grab this guy, now I'm just going to use this one for the experiment purpose. If I grab him and I paste him, because he's half a voxel, he's not the right shape I want yet. Essentially I want a whole voxel, so I just paste down below him because he's half a voxel in length, and then when I'm pasting him below, because he's on the top side, I get a full voxel that is not offset. I don't want it offset for the purposes of the center of this block. I get this little guy here. If you mouse over him, make a copy if you want, or just have a check what size he is, you'll notice he is in the center on the vertical axis, and he curves off on one of the sides. It's a good little shape.
Yeah, you can make cylinders out of it.
Yeah, well, it's very strange, but I'll show you something interesting here. So when it's sitting there and we're looking at it, we can see that it's got one sharp edge. But if I stack a couple of these together, I was looking at it earlier, okay, that sharp edge disappears. It's a little odd thing. Like, you go and look at that green and brown one that I've done over there, it looks really strange. It seems to the edge vanishes when you put them all together into a circle. I think the system has some sort of special command that makes it try and render into a specific shape. So anyway, I also have found an easier way of doing this technique, by the way, so I'll give you that.
Sweet. Although I liked making the shapes, that was actually fun.
Yeah. So if I take that and I paste it there, and then I'm going to paste it next to itself to make it a bit wide, so it's got another one. I'm just going to flip it on its axis, the blue axis, and paste it again. Kind of start making as if I made a half cylinder, which is basically what I've done right here. And I can pull out a sliver, and that's the edge, right? And if I was to post those in all of the if I was to post it in a little circle and make a full cylinder, I would get one of those slivers between each of the wedges, right? So that essentially is the shape that we're manipulating. So what we have to do is we don't want to change the shape of that at all, and I prefer to work with it as a flat surface. So what we want to do is we just want to move one edge. In this case, I'm going to grab. Actually, I can just do it with a triangle. It's not going to do me any harm, but please, for the consideration, imagine that I'm actually doing it with a flat surface rather than with this. I'm just doing this for the quickness. I'm just grabbing one of these little offset 1 voxel long by half a voxel wide cubes that I've made over here. Sorry, not cubes. You'd call them little
prisms.
Strips.
Rectangular prism.
Rectangular prisms. And I'm just going to paste it right next to one end. Give me a second, make sure I've got it in the right spot. Oh, sorry. I could do that.
You can probably delete that sliver out.
Yep, and you'll notice that's cool. You'll notice now that I've angled it down by half a voxel, right?
Because the prism is offset to begin with.
Yes.
Right.
Now here's a tricky note. There's 2 types of spirals I've done. There's one that I can do that is essentially a single point, and you only need to angle the point up or down the width of a voxel, because we're not moving off the center. The other option is you have to use a full width voxel, and you have to either angle it up across the total length, one full voxel up or down, because if you don't, they won't align up to the next piece, if that makes sense. You can't, for example, do one that's 1.5 voxels wide, because you can't get it to align when it turns around to the next curved part. They will look odd, and I can give you an example later on, but for the moment, trust me, you can either do a line or you can do one that's 1 voxel wide. And what we just do is we just take that and we just paste it on the edge, right? And you'll see it tapers down that one side. See, we've just pulled it at the center, it's just tapered down on one side, so we've angled half our block. Cool. So what we need to do is rotate it. So we want to do the other side and do basically the same thing, but instead of being that way, we want to and just playing the angle because I have that a sliver wider. This time we want to angle it up. Notice how before we had it down, now we want to angle it up. So I've just flipped it on its vertical axis, and now that we've got a wedge, it actually looks easier to understand. You'll notice that when we had that sharp edge, it's still sitting in the middle of the voxel on that sharp edge, so it will meet with the other voxel, but on the far edge, the wedge, the thick edge of the wedge side, it's now sitting up. It's now sitting up. It's 1 voxel and it's offset up by half a voxel. When I apply it to the other side, it lifts that one up. Now what we've got is we've got it 1 voxel wide at the bottom, but it's offset down 1 in the middle from my original block. It stays exactly where it was, so it's sitting at the middle, 1 voxel wide, and then at the far edge near where I am, it is sitting up half a voxel and it is sitting 1 voxel wide. And that is the core shape.
That's so cool.
So if you grab that shape, I'm just moving around to get some space. If you grab that shape and you paste it, as an example, I pasted one here, and I leave a 1 voxel gap and then paste another one. Okay, I can start to build up the side. Now I can paste them apart. I can paste them together as well. I'll paste them apart to start off with to give you an example, and then I'll paste them together and show you what it looks like. But if I grab just a couple of those, I'm going to stack it 4, and I select them as a group just to save time. And then I rotate them once, and then paste them. And what I want to do is I want to line the inside, the outside, to make it look, because I can put it here. I'm just going to give you an example. If you look on the inside, everything sits flat and smooth, but on the outside it doesn't line up, because it's never going to. It's not going to line up on both surfaces, because we're playing with physics here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lie to the middle, because you're never going to see that, and just do it on the outside. And you'll see when I line it for the outside, it works, because it's one half a voxel down, and the other one is 1/2 a voxel up. And when they are in that space together, they sit at a new angle. They align because we've offset them using the whole voxel space, because we can bend the size of a voxel. And then I move it up, and I place it again and again, and you will get a spiral, because it is moving around.
That makes my brain happy.
Now, these can be pasted together as well. They don't actually have to be separate. Like if I wanted to, I can just paste them on top of each other, and make a thick little column, just like a normal column. I can grab that whole group, and I can spin them around. And this is a lot easier to do when I'm not taking out a sliver between each, because I don't have to offset anymore, because there's one for every single space. They are automatically offset, because we've got a corresponding voxel for every single one I'm making in my little chain of events here. Yep.